So I just went to Ireland on a landscape photography and hiking road trip mission. Did I succeed? Yes. Did I fail? For sure. And that's not me being ambiguous, that's a fact. But that's not the whole picture either. Because success or failure, it's too black and white. See, it's the little stuff in between that helps you learn, that helps you grow, that informs your art as a creative and ultimately keeps you coming back, keeps me coming back, keeps us coming back. And even though I came away from this trip with some of my favorite images I've ever taken, I'm arguably happier about this cell phone clip that experience we had than any of the photography I came away with. Well, it's up for debate. I'm actually stoked about both. But here's some tips, stuff I learned, and other reflections from an absolutely incredible road trip I just had in Ireland. Landscape photography is difficult. Now, I didn't expect to go to Ireland and just drop banger after banger, grab keeper after keeper. I know from my travels that most photos you take don't even get edited, but on this trip specifically, I made a conscious decision beforehand to lean into pure landscape photography. So what does that mean? I pretty much never went below f5.6, was usually around f7 to 9, and took a bunch around f11 to f14. Actually, I think my favorite photo of the trip is at f22. If you're a pure working professional landscape photographer, you'd probably shake your head and roll your eyes and wonder why that's even worth mentioning. I'll get to that, so kind of treat this like my introduction to pure landscape photography in this regard. Like, in order to execute these photos in this way with these higher apertures, I used a 2 to 5 stop variable ND for all of them. Sure, I would have liked more stops, but I'm not sure it would have mattered because most of my shots, most of our locations atop mountain peaks in valleys, whether in the harbor of Galway or the peaks of Connemara National Park or the glacial valley of the Gap of Dunlow, I mean, the wind was like a steady 30 to 50 miles per hour. Sorry, I don't know what that is in kilometers, but yeah. I was a tad limited in terms of those longer shutter speeds. I think the max I was able to go to and keep the stabilization working with things in focus was maybe 2.5 seconds tops. I also bought a circular polarizer specifically for this trip, and I really enjoyed using it for some of my photo and video shots, but I can't remember entirely which shots I used it on, especially the photos. I can say for certain though that this shot in Galway, I filter stacked with the variable ND and the circular polarizer, and I got some of that greenish barrel vignetting on the sides of the image. I was able to take it out with some simple editing and salvage the photo. Not that this is like my favorite photo, but really I just need to practice more if I want to learn the right way to filter stack. They're all, Polar Pro filters, so they should stack good. I also find it funny that at the time of taking this photo, I was so stoked, thinking it was like a winner. I mean, I'm probably gonna re-edit it because as it stands, it doesn't do much for me. But the silver lining with this photo is this was the moment on the trip that I really committed. I mean, I did so before the trip, I had a plan, but committed to the high aperture, long shutter speed, purest landscape photograph. Because with landscape photography, it's essentially as though I'm learning something entirely new. What I mean is, I've shot countless landscapes throughout my travels, and while I didn't ignore composition in those photos, and some of them are in fact my favorite landscape photos I've ever taken, I think the trap of f2.8 was always there. Over the last year or so, I've really been paying attention to my aperture and depth of field and what's in focus and where the eye is drawn and what the subject is in the image, whether it's photo or video. That's why I made this trip a specific landscape photography trip, to do it similar to the way a purist landscape photographer would, to try something new but old but new. Cue the F8 and be their mantra. But really, I wanted to see if I could go back to the photography basics and really make a good composition first. If I turned the photo black and white, would it communicate what I wanted it to? No aimless pointing and shooting at f2.8, though I will 100% use f2.8 for much of my photography, wildlife, low light, candid portraits, sports stuff, etc. moving forward. But the only caveat with all of this, with this goal, with this commitment to the landscape, was that I knew my aspirations to seek out and film and photograph wildlife would kind of have to take a back seat on this trip. But I'm fine with that. You can only do so much with the time you've got. So yeah, the landscape was the goal. And honestly, no better place in the world to go all in on it than Ireland. It's the best place in the world. I've been there twice now. I've been to only 15 countries total, but it's literally the best place in the world. Anyways, moving on. Cat's out of the bag. I mean, there are no more secret places and hidden gems in the world. I'm not vilifying tourists either, or tourism, because as of late, I've made it a point to do smaller scale tourist things on our trips, at least one or two. But if you think I'll ever wait in line on the Amalfi Coast and take a dump on the locals to stand in an Instagram viral spot and pretend like I'm the only one there, I mean, this could be an entirely separate video. Some places rely on tourism. Some places don't, but are very accustomed to and welcoming of tourists, using this trip to Ireland as an example. That's also because they're the nicest people in the world. I guess what I try to do when I travel are the simplest, most basic things to not have that negative tourist impact, if that makes sense. I'm already renting a car and adding to, local traffic and congestion. But for example, our trips usually involve a ton of hiking. So the most basic, ethical, positive I can have when I travel and hike is carry in, carry out. No scrap of a protein bar wrapper left behind. Stay on trail. Don't disturb the wildlife or trample on, native plant life and fragile ecosystems. Support local businesses, people, even artists any way you can. Another example is on this trip, we stopped in the town of Dingle and hit some small, mom and pop bakeries and cafes and a local bookstore. And I purchased a landscape photography book by a local artist photographer, specifically local to the Dingle Peninsula, Ireland, etc. And as someone who wants to potentially make my own travel photography book one day and tell stories, what better way to support another creative than by purchasing their book? Because this isn't a book you'll find in Barnes & Noble or anything. You'd have to follow this artist or just happen upon one of the few small bookshops that carry his book. Shout out to Richard Krieg, I hope I'm saying your name right. I'll link his Instagram below. It's an absolutely gorgeous book with exquisite imagery. I mean, I have too many photography coffee table books, but this one's really awesome. But overall, try to engage with the local economy, be aware of the footprint you leave, because again, I'm already renting a car and clogging up the road, so the least I can do is leave the trails clean and do some research about businesses and bakeries and avoid Starbucks and support a local landscape photographer, even if all of those things are on a minute scale. But that brings me to my next point. You don't go to somewhere like Ireland if you don't want to encounter other tourists and massive tour buses, except you do. You can. Just go to bed early and get up early if your goal is to capture, those moments with the best light and least amount of crowds, or if your trip is photography or videography or filmmaking centered. For example, the Connemara Pass Drive, part of that drive is one of the highest roads in Ireland, or maybe the highest in County Kerry. And although we got unlucky in that our journey through it was shrouded in clouds, which also kind of made it awesome, we encountered only one other vehicle the entire time. That's that viral road where you see lines of cars and tour buses and people soiling themselves driving it. But yeah, our drive on it, our entire Sleehead drive, again, if I'm saying that right, we started before 7 a.m., got great light, and finished by 8:30 a.m. with several stops along the way, getting out and taking photos. And I think we maybe passed 3 to 4 other cars the entire time. But what this allows you to do is actually discover things. I want my photo ops and video shots to slow cook in the crock pot. I want time to play with compositions and experiment and find the best angle, as opposed to queuing up and lining up and just going to the viral hotspots. I mean, you'll be hard-pressed to get any other angle than the angle everyone else gets at those places if you're doing it that way. You can, but it's tough. And that's why this shot probably is, my favorite shot of the whole trip. F-22 as well, but it was unplanned. It's not a viral pier or famous rock or anything like that, just another cove, another stop along the way. And it's these interstitial moments and places that being up early and not being behind a caravan of cars and tour buses allows you to experience. I admit it would have been dope to get this view westward facing as it is around sunset, but I also think, this atmosphere, the clouds, the weather was kind of representative of our trip to Ireland as a whole. Ominous, dramatic, damp, windy, all of it. So, for God's sakes, early to bed, early to rise, go explore outside of peak hours and you'll be amazed at what kind of presents itself. And one other thing I did on this trip was to go to the same spot multiple times, but at times when I knew there might be less people. For example, our second place we stayed at was exactly 1 kilometer from the famous Pine Island viewpoint. It was actually like a working horse farm. It was totally awesome. So I went there 2 nights in a row since the sun didn't set until 9:30 p.m. anyways, and knew that going at the tail end of a storm would mean less people, better light, more opportunity. I mean, maybe the larger picture here is going to Ireland in early May, as opposed to June through August, in and of itself meant that we would experience less crowds. But I'm glad I went to Pine Island 2 nights in a row. I mean, I'm glad we went to Ireland in, early May, because as happy as I was with the shots I got the first night at Pine Island Viewpoint, I think the light was better on the second night. And I even got to experiment with different focal lengths. I got the drone up, took some video, did a bunch of photos, and admittedly for this panoramic, I just shot it wide and cropped. But, the A7R5 at 60 megapixels allows for that. And if you think I'm removing the power lines cutting across the island and the water, you're crazy. Yeah, they shouldn't have been built there in the first place. Maybe they could have rerouted. I don't know. I'm not an electrician. But they're there. Embrace it. Don't spot remove and paint out, or do if you want, I don't care. Paint out and do some artificial image gymnastics to make the place unrepresentative of what it really is. Without ranting too much, let's move on. So I was a little bummed when I looked at the weather report while we were there. Bummed because we typically got days of mixed rain and sun throughout the entire day, 4 seasons in a day, with high winds throughout. But that's actually not what bummed me. It was seeing the next week after we left, that projected weather, however accurate that can be in Ireland, showing low to mid 70s, mostly sunny, passing clouds. But again, I didn't go to Ireland in early May looking for, 75 and sunny 8 days in a row. And point of fact, the aforementioned mist, the atmosphere, the rain, the dark and ominous dramatic clouds, the moments of blue sky and intense sunsets after those storms, that's literally what it's all about. As a photographer, videographer, filmmaker, landscape or otherwise, this weather, these conditions lent themselves to so much more, I think, of the raw aesthetic of the place. That's why I love Scotland, Ireland, Newfoundland, even Acadia National Park in Maine. I want to see that unpredictable and unforgiving kind of coastal weather interact with that rugged landscape. Did it backfire a couple times? Sure. I barely shot anything in the Gap of Dunloe, a place I was really looking forward to, photographically, but that's fine. That's part of the game. Plus, the hike there was unforgettable for, good and bad reasons alike. But yeah, as creatives, I think the conditions of a place, weather and otherwise, as they interact with the subject should help shape, kind of how we attempt to show that subject, as opposed to looking for, the illusion of control and preconceived vision and perfect conditions of what we want the photo and story and or landscape to be, if that all makes sense. All right, so a couple quick notes about gear. I only brought one camera, my Sony A7R5. For lenses, I brought my G Master version 2s of both the 24-70 and 70-200. I use the former for about 75% of all my shots. That also helped me remove the conflict of choice. And since I was focused on those longer shutter speeds and higher apertures, like I mentioned, it was nice. I could just leave that 2 to 5 stop variable ND on the camera and switch more quickly between photo and video without issue. I still have the Maglock NDs on my radar, but I'm not rushing out to buy them anytime soon. I also brought my Sigma 150-600 Sport lens, as that's my wildlife go-to lens, but it ended up being pretty much dead weight. I hate to admit it. I mean, I grabbed a couple shots with it of some guillemots, if I'm saying that correctly too, puffins and whatnot at the cliffs of Moher, but nothing to write home about. So I think there's a good lesson there too, as I'm always trying to travel lighter. I'd be afraid to need something, and not have it more than I would be, frustrated to travel with it and lug the weight and never use it. So all the drone photography is on the Mini 4 Pro, which I got certified by the Irish Aviation Authority before my trip to use, because with the, extended battery, it goes above 250 grams. But I always try to adhere to whatever the, kind of industry standard or local law might be regarding my drone. I love too how the problems you see, even in the US, you see everywhere. Like we were hiking at Connemara National Park, and boom, there's a dude flying his drone. Like, not only are drones almost ubiquitously banned from flying in national parks, the world over, it's just historically uncool. Like, it's uncool to be at a place where people can interact with nature, with the outdoors, maybe wildlife, potentially even a sliver of peace and serenity, and there you are buzzing overhead, for what? Like a viral shot? I mean, the guy we saw had no clue what he was doing either, which kind of makes it more harmless but more annoying. He was just an idiot. I can assure you that he was getting no good footage or photos. And I think this is a much more nuanced or complex topic for another video, drones in general. Maybe it's not that complex, actually. I know there's a lot of corruption around it too, but I personally would never be someone that would film someone else and verbally give someone crap or, threaten action or choose confrontation over, them, a person flying their drone where they're not supposed to. I'm just wondering why people lack the intelligence, to not see their actions universally. To not stop and say, if everyone did what I am doing right now, what would the result be? It's really that simple. I fully realize that if you were talking to a true, outdoorsman, hunter, mountaineer, angler, adventurer, mountain climber, whatever, they would say that, most national parks are essentially amusement parks. But I still think they're a great bridge between the hobbyist, the everyman, the person looking to dip their toes into nature and the more wild world around them. For me, again, as a Part 107 certified commercial drone pilot myself for the last 6+ years, I for sure don't want to hear drones buzzing above me when I'm hiking at a national park. But whatever, you do you. I hope the viral clip helps you secure your legacy. Whatever. That's, again, whole nother rant for another video, and I might make that video one day about drones. So my last point, the big lesson I learned, besides the other lesson that there are rating systems for the quality of waterproof gear. I mean, I always knew there was a difference between water resistant and waterproof, just didn't know there were levels to waterproof, but the more you know, you get what you pay for. The big lesson I learned was presence, or rather, I learned kind of the next level of presence in my mind. And this came from something that I was actually regretting on the trip in real time. So, for example, I'll give you for instance, I brought my Action 5 Pro and Rode mics for vlogging, and I enjoy vlogging, I do. However, I talked about this in my last video, go check it out. I also like to get home and reflect on a trip too before making these videos. And more importantly, I want to be as present as possible when I'm, with my girlfriend or even by myself on a trip. So if I'm talking through and filming everything, then I'm separating myself from her and or from the moment by playing a character of sorts. You made it. I mean, think about our world, how we interact with the world and the people in it, because in some ways, everyone we know or see is playing a character all the time, every day. We're all seeing and being characters, myself included. But I knew this would be a special trip, and I wanted to focus on the drive, the conversation, the company, the music, and actually seeing the landscape without always needing to film or photograph it. Yes, I got a ton of, video shots and a ton of photos, but I can confidently say that my commitment to being present on this trip is not a regret at all, with the absence of whatever I missed shooting. That clip at the top, at the beginning of this video of us in driving sideways rain and hail with 50+ mile/hour winds. I mean, yeah, that sucked in real time, getting pounded on that mountain, being soaked to the bone. But once we committed to make it to the top, that was it. It's on, challenge accepted. That actually happened on 2 hikes, being slammed by the Irish weather on our way to the peaks. And one of those hikes was on, unmarked trail or no trail, just up the side of the mountain. So we had to figure out our route beforehand in real time and kind of download maps and do all that stuff, which was super cool. It was really gnarly. But what I'm getting at is I'll never forget those experiences. They're special, for me, for us. And it's not because I got the best photo ever. It's just because we did it and I was present for it. And I'll always remember it. One more quick final thought. I'll always think of the times I didn't stop and pull off, the photos I didn't take, the places I didn't go, the video shots I didn't get. But, Lately, I've been thinking that's a glass half empty mindset. Having a great hike, or at least a type 2 fun, memorable hike in sideways hail and driving rain with 50-mile-per-hour winds up an unmarked mountain from base to peak, is as much a, dare I say, formative moment and lifelong memory as any great photo I've ever gotten. So to my last point about not using the Action 5 Pro, not vlogging, being present, it's fine not using those things, not vlogging the whole trip. Because in some ways, my camera is an extension of myself at this point in my life, the metaphorical and literal lens, through which I see the world. But there's no harm in keeping it in the bag, especially because so much of how we travel is experience-based. Physical, active, outdoors, where the hikes are the main attraction and activity of a day. I say so much of how we travel, my girlfriend and I, but probably a lot of people. Where, the food doesn't need to be filmed or photographed or documented for my social media story. Where, again, the commitment to the present is as valuable and, special as any photo or video you might get. So you get what you get. I think it's really important as I reflect on these trips. Sometimes it's like minutes later after not pulling off and not doing a Yui, or sometimes it's like the next day or the next week. I'm trying to get better at not regretting what I didn't get. You get what you get, you be happy about what you got, and everything else is really icing on the cake, to be honest with you. I got a lot, I had a great time, with the camera, without the camera, and yeah, it's all good. What are you gonna do? But super cool trip, really excited. Comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Let me know what you thought. If you have any critiques, again, this isn't my first time doing landscape photography, but in this context, in this style, it kind of is. But hope you enjoyed. This was an awesome trip. I was thinking about doing a Lightroom editing breakdown, but the last time I did that, it was my worst video. I lost subscribers on it. But I wouldn't mind doing it because I'm really happy with the way these edits turned out. Yeah, I got some other stuff in the bag coming up, on the books, on whatever. I don't know. I'm tired. I gotta, it's weird weather since we got home. I'm wearing a hoodie. It's cold in the basement here. It was cold last night. Now it's humid today. And I don't know. I'm done. I'm talking too much. This is it. We're done here. We're done. Check out that logo though. You see that? That was a banging ramen place in Dublin, which I used to talk smack on Dublin. And then we had a good time there. Dublin was actually pretty dope. I like Galway better. All right, I gotta go.